Hope is a Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Today we're going to read a poem and use figurative language or literary devices to help us to support and understand comprehension. First, Emily Dickinson was an American poet who was born in Massachusetts in 1830. Even though her family was very prominent in their community, Emily Dickinson seemed to enjoy time alone with a few close friends. When she died, her family found 1,800 poems sewn together into small notes in her room. They later published these poems in 1890. Again, we use literary devices, sometimes called figurative language, to help us mine the deep meaning of a poem. It helps support a level of understanding that the author wants us to understand. So let's begin. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without words and never stops at all. And sweetest as the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chilliest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Let's look at the imagery of the poem. What picture is the author trying to draw for us? When we look at the first couple of lines, we see this hope has feathers and perches in the soul. She is using the picture of a tiny bird sitting and resting. Perches would be kind of saying this bird is resting here. The imagery in the first stanza evokes something in the imagination. We see a bird sitting on a branch. Perching gives the sense that this bird is resting on this branch. The next thing we're going to look for is metaphor. Metaphor is when an author uses two things to compare. Hope here is compared with feathers. Emily Dickinson compares this hope to something we can see and recognize, the bird perched on the branch. The next thing we can see is personification, the next figurative language. Hope here is personified and given a characteristic as a bird that sings and perches in the soul, attributing human-like qualities to an abstract concept. Abstract means hope. That's not anything we can really see or touch, but she is giving it something we can recognize. The next thing we want to look at is repetition of words, and that's always important in poetry. And sings, and never stops, and the sweetest, and the sore. And all these ands adds emphasis and reinforces the theme of hope's enduring nature. Hope is very enduring, no matter what is happening in our life. The next thing we want to look at is alliteration. Alliteration means the repetition of consonant sounds. Let's look at it. Sings the tune without words. Sore must be the storm. Sweetest is the gale. Okay, so we have this S sound. And when authors do this, they want to emphasize a rhythmic pattern and emphasize the key phrases here. Rhythm gives a very emotional effect as we read the poem. The next thing we want to look at is paradox. The idea, now paradox means when two opposite things are placed side by side, and we use that to compare both. So let's look at this. Feathers perching in the soul. Sweet, it's warm. It has kept so many warm. And then we have words like storm. Abash the little bird in the chilliest land, in the strangest sea, in extremity. Yet this hope is ever enduring. The purpose of paradox is to put two things side by side. Often we call this juxtaposition. The purpose is to put two things side by side to compare them. When we look at the second and third stanza, we see the words storm, abash, chilliest, strangest, see, extremities, the extreme difficulties, right? The harshness of life could hurt or even scare the sweet bird away, yet this hope sings, it sings, and never stops at all. And it never asks a crumb of me. Finally, universal theme. Okay? No matter what culture you come from, what language you speak, we all have faced the worst situations in life and have used all our strength. This inspirational hope that perches in the soul is so resilient even in the midst of a storm, but never asks anything of me. It kind of just sits there in our soul. It is resilient and ever true.